There is a sentence in the English language that is the longest sentence that one can say using only one word. And that sentence is buffalo, 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 buffalo.
That can actually theoretically be extended as long as you want it to. It can just keep going.
I think it's a law of diminishing returns at a certain point.
Oh, for sure.
But I just want to say that, like, if that sentence sounds like nonsense, it's because buffalo either doesn't have a past tense or that sentence is missing a word. It's missing who. In between,
you don't necessarily need
the
who.
fifth and sixth buffalo.
You don't need who.
It's
but
implied.
I do agree that it's a nonsensical sentence. Like it doesn't actually work.
No,
right?
because the preface
also people
of it,
don't use buffalo as a verb. Sorry.
Correct.
Sorry.
That's actually that's the biggest issue. I've never been like,
this.
yeah, I buffaloed that guy.
Dude,
no,
I got so fucking buffaloed yesterday.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the worst of all possible worlds, the first and only podcast to buffalo all over itself. I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Brian's.
And I'm the worst of all possible Josh's. And once again, we are back for another installment of Whit's Endless Summer. The ongoing sub-series of the worst of all possible worlds, in which we recap episodes of the Christian children's radio drama Adventures in Odyssey, produced by Focus on the Family. And joining us today, we have a special guest we're very excited to have on the show. He is a playwright, a man about town. I don't know how many times I've said that in an intro, but he is a man about town. I see him about town every once in a while. It's Chas LiBretto.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Chas, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit sort of about yourself, what it is that you write about, and then also how you got dragged into the horrible, horrible world of Odyssey.
Yeah, I write plays, frequently plays that deal with history or myth. The Odyssey is near and dear to my heart. I'm producing Cyclops, a rock opera right now, which was a musical adaptation I co-wrote with composer Jason Landon Marcus about, well, it's based on the only existing satyr play that we have, a 2,500-year-old lost genre of theater that's neither comedy nor tragedy, that deals with the episode from the Odyssey where Odysseus, the Greek general and hero, washes up on the island of the Cyclops Polyphemus and has to use his wits to escape.
Excuse me, sorry, did you say?
I'm sorry, his what?
His wit.
Yeah. Wow. So it's based on a 2,500-year-old play? I didn't even know they had plays back then.
I know.
I don't like this character, Brian. It's very weird. It's very disconcerting hearing that come out of your mouth.
Version of Brian who knows nothing about theater before the year 1970.
Yeah.
The LA Times called it a thrilling freak show.
They did. They also called it a musical for people who are too cool for musicals, which I've always liked, but I am not too cool for musicals. So
yeah, none of us are.
Yeah,
that's kind of our thing.
Yeah. Would you say, Chas, that no man is too cool for musicals?
Hey, yeah. There's a 2,500-year-old pun right there. Well, maybe even an older one.
Whoa, hey, I'm walking around with one eye here.
You know, I don't believe that you don't know anything about Greek plays.
What? No, it's all Greek to me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, we are not here to talk about the Odyssey. We are here to talk about Adventures in Odyssey.
We are now going to a world where the only satyr that anyone has ever known is Mr. Tumnus.
Yes. And I am curious about this, Chas, too, because you were telling me about your exposure to Adventures in Odyssey. I think it was after our live show.
Well, so I was raised going to the Episcopalian Church. It's sort of the Bud Light of Catholicism.
I feel like you're being a little bit too hard on Episcopalians. I think that it's actually the Bud Light with lime of Catholicism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a little zest to it.
Here's the thing. I think you can be too hard on Episcopalians because there's like 17 of them.
Right.
We're so lucky we got one here today.
It's just sort of like, well, okay, what's the point of all, to me, it's like, it's just sort of removing all the pomp and circumstance of Catholicism and leaving you with vibes.
Yeah,
Sure.
So my mother worked in the church vestry volunteered during her summers off from teaching elementary school. So my sister and I would spend parts of our summers in the basement of this church while she was going through stuff. And there was a room down there where there were boxes full of videotapes.
A room of consequences.
Yeah.
Okay, so these were the cartoons then.
Yeah, so there were VHS copies of the cartoon Adventures in Odyssey. And, you know, I must have been 9 or 10 years old, and you see the box art. I still remember it very clearly. You know, it's a Disney looking villain kind of like leering over a grandfather clock that sort of has magic around it. And the characters all look like they're from like a Don Bluth cartoon from the 80s, but they're also kind of 90s looking or Disney-esque. And so it's very appealing to a kid. And so my sister and I popped it into the VCR and ate sugar cookies and too many sugar cookies and just watched a really disappointing cartoon, honestly.
I was going to ask, like, were these tapes, like, did they end up on regular rotation, or it was like a one and done kind of thing, or it was like, yeah, now we're good?
We watched a few of them. I mean, whatever was down there, which I think must have been 3 or 4. As a kid, I remember being struck by some of the voices because they sounded really familiar to me. Because you know, a lot of the voice actors are people you would have heard in, you know, Disney and Don Bluth cartoons at the time.
What if it was just like the thing that you liked, except that it also sucked? That's basically the pitch. Well, we went back all the way to 1988.
Yeah.
For episode 42, The Last Great Adventure of the Summer, written by Phil Lawler.
We got a little bit of Whit in here. I did not clip any of Whit because I made a promise to all of you that he's dead. He died.
Whit fucking died.
Hal Smith is dead for real.
He is dead and we have killed him.
But he does have a 2-minute scene here at the beginning. If I was thinking enough ahead, I probably would have just cut the scene so that AJ didn't have to be traumatized.
It was fine here in Hal Smith again because he's also not in his like meddling mode here. It's interesting, right? Because he sounds more like Jack here. Like he sounds like the kind and like actually benevolent Whit that we would eventually get in Jack.
It's really strange because he's talking about some previous episodes of the show, ones that we haven't covered here, the Camp Whadanut episode, and also one that AJ talked about on Wadfam Chalk Pod with those good boys about Vacation Bible School. But he's talking to this kid named Terry Johnston.
Yeah, Terry Johnston, really rich character, really lived in, really great vocal performance here.
Terry
just good.
the Rock Johnston. This is the same kid that played Kirk McGinty in that episode about like why the Vietnam War was good.
But Chris basically lets us know that summer is winding down.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone's gathered at Whit's End to tell their great stories about the summer, but poor
like
Terry doesn't have any stories because he hasn't been fucking doing anything all summer.
He's like me in the basement of the Episcopalian church.
My dad hasn't wanted to go anywhere or do anything. The only thing we've done all summer is to go to libraries to watch travel films and animal documentaries. He's been that way ever since my mom, you know. We only stopped in here because we wanted to get something to drink before the film tonight.
So they drop that bomb.
Yeah.
Pretty early on that the mother is dead. And for a moment I was like, oh, is there something here?
No,
absolutely not. No.
They needed to explain why this kid doesn't have a mom without making his dad a sinner.
Something that's kind of interesting about the dynamic here, too, is that Whit has just been fucking hectoring this kid.
Oh, yeah.
And then the moment that he finds out that Terry's mom is dead, he was in that, like, that's why his dad is depressed, was just like, he actually offers the rare Whit apology, which is really something else.
So like, oh shit, no, I didn't. Oh man, and he doesn't talk to the dad either to be like, hey, your kid is bored out of his fucking mind. Like he actually just steps off.
Done. We've all been there, right? We've all had bummer summers and have kind of been jealous of our friends who seem to be doing things. And I thought it was a strange bit of writing. We wanted to get a drink together before. It seemed a little like it could have been taken a different way. The dad is
doing shots before they go. Yeah, I mean, it's a real shame that they killed off child Tim Gunn as quickly as they did, because he actually does genuinely like have a very. It's not the best performance, but it is a very interesting voice that he has.
Well, he's kind of sounds like Hank Venture. He has the Hank Venture accent.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so Dad comes through because, again, they're both hanging out at Whit's End. It's like, all right, time to go home, right? So Terry and his dad depart Whit's End, and then this happens.
The bins must be inside this fence. Let me just open the gate. What? So, Cat's Paw, we meet again.
Dad?
Just stay calm, Terry. Sir, I think you have the wrong man. You both know I don't. I told you I'd hunt you down. Did you really think you could hide from me in this small town, Cat's Paw?
Why do you keep calling him Cat's Paw? His name is George Johnston.
Terry. George Johnston. Very good. Well, Mr. Johnston. There is. I want the formula. Look, I really don't know what you're talking about. No? Well, if I can't persuade you, perhaps I can get your son to.
Dad!
No!
Dad! You decked him!
Run, Terry. This way, down the alley.
This
I had to keep
music.
this music. This is so good.
Yeah, we're in Tron, baby.
Well, my three thoughts are really, and these sort of travel through all the episodes you guys made me listen to at gunpoint.
Okay, you don't need to say it like that. Jeez.
Well, is that the action sequences, of which there are many.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've listened to a few sort of radio dramas in my day, and what's funny about these ones is they sort of skip the kind of ghastly sound effects. Like he says, "Oh, you decked him, Dad," but you don't really hear much of a punch.
Yeah.
And there was another one later on where the guy gets injected with like a syringe. And like he got jabbed or something like that, and it's like you don't hear any noise. There's no like when he gets.
Yeah, you just have the rustling clothes sound.
That's it.
It's like our friend Trevor Strunk, when we had him on to talk about Adventures in Odyssey, because we just like torturing our friends. He talked about how he listens to 50s radio dramas when he's like writing or whatever, and that always has like a scene where the shadow is like, "Oh, not so fast," and then you just hear rustling sounds, and he's like, "Yeah, I bet the shadow's doing something really fucking cool right now." But it's just like noise. It's just like, okay, I know that people are in a tussle, but I don't know what it is beyond that.
And this is very early on in Odyssey, right? This is still episode 42.
This is the first year still of operation.
Yeah, I mean, even in the credits, it's credited as being written by Phil Lawler and Paul McCusker, as opposed to like just being one or the other of them. So they're still trying to find their legs a little bit, but it is very silly how quickly the stakes escalate from nothing to beating up a man in the alley. Also, what was this guy's plan? Was he just... They offered to take the trash out so they would go back around to get to the dumpster, but the guy didn't know that.
This is Whit's trash.
Yeah, like it's almost, if he was trying to sneak up on Whit, that's one thing, but if he's actually trying to go after George, and by the way, there can only be one George in the town of Odyssey, so this guy has to. Well,
it's like the whole thing with Jimmy's, and there's a lot of names that get reused, and so the people with the old names, when they stop becoming recurring characters, they're gone.
They're gone. Bye. Yep. They're through the no door
directly. They joined the mass.
Spoilers, Brian.
It turns out that there's way more to Dad than his initial first appearances.
I didn't know you knew karate.
Well, there's a lot about me you don't know.
Why is this guy after you? I mean, you're a shoe salesman. What'd you do? Sell him the wrong size or something?
I'm afraid it's a little more complicated than that.
He kept calling you Cat's Paw.
Until now, that's the only name he's known me by.
Why?
Because we don't use real names in the CIA.
Oh boy.
There's something about the absolute gormlessness of Terry's delivery that I think is so funny. Like, gee whiz, Dad.
We have to talk about what a dog shit name Cat's Paw is.
It's
I
terrible.
don't understand it. They say it constantly in this episode like it's supposed to sound really cool, and I don't get it. Is it a reference to something? Like, is there a character in Live and Let Die that is related to cats in some way?
No,
like, is it just like a
spy name.
dog
It's a
snout?
spine. It's an idiom, right? I mean, it's like one of those things that it usually, I think it means a dupe. It means like someone who's being manipulated.
Oh, okay. So it does have a greater meaning other than like the cats have paws.
Yeah, although it's weird because he is the heroic CIA agent, and it's a weird code name for someone who isn't, in theory, a dupe himself.
But I mean, this is every child's dream, right? You wished that while you're in that basement of that Episcopalian church that you'd have some foreigner come in, point a gun at your mom and say, "Hello, Burgundy," or some shit. And then just fucking kidnap you and drag you across the world. I love the detail about the opening of this episode where he was like, "Oh yeah, Dad just watches travelogues and nature documentaries at the library, and he drags me along to do it with him." And that's not a cover. That's his actual personality. That's just what CIA guys are like.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
The banality of evil.
Well, probably because of that, he's been able to maintain a pretty good cover, but that doesn't keep him, of course, from knowing lots of things that are vital to national security. And so we get some more exposition here. They keep running. They end up on a train track and they jump inside a boxcar.
Yeah, they're being chased by a man whose trademark is that he wears black clothes.
But they do end up in this boxcar on this train. The train starts to move, and then they do some father-son bonding on the train.
Why did you become a CIA agent? How did you join?
Well, the how is simple. They recruited me right out of college. As for why, well, I love my country, and I want to defend it against people out there who want to hurt it.
Like the man with the black gloves?
Right. Especially him.
Who is he anyway? A Russian?
No, he's really a man with no country at all.
Huh?
He works for an international syndicate that sells military secrets to the highest bidder. It doesn't matter what country you're from, as long as you've got the most money.
A man who works for an international syndicate that sells state secrets to the highest bidder.
Not Spectre. Not Spectre.
They recruited me right out of college. They kidnapped me. They put me in a windowless basement.
He's like the Pete Buttigieg story.
Yeah. I mean, basically.
Hey, Dad, why do you have that map of Iraq with all the mineral deposits labeled?
The train, I guess, ends up in Manhattan.
That's in New
That's
York.
who you are.
We're in New York City.
Yeah, we're in New York City.
Deep dish pizza.
There's
green chili on your tacos. New York, baby.
There's a hose in the top of the boxcar that's spraying knockout gas into the boxcar.
They've got the colored smoke bombs from Batman that put you to sleep.
I just want to point out what a terrible spy this man is. Here are 2 quotes from him as gas is being pumped into the boxcar. It must be some kind of gas. And then he yells at his son, Terry, try not to breathe.
That sounds like he assessed the situation correctly, AJ. I don't know what your issue is.
What would you do, AJ?
Would you rather he said, "Oh, I bet that's not some kind of gas"?
Terry, take deep breaths.
Yeah, this stuff is fun. Breathe it in.
Yeah, let's go.
Sort of
This
like
got me
Quaaludes,
through
just
grieving
ride
your
it
mother.
out.
Just breathe in deep, Terry.
It's the 80s, baby.
You didn't see mom again. So we have come so far so fast. Like this is like right at the first break, right?
Yeah.
And we have
yet
gone,
nothing has happened.
and yet nothing has happened.
So
Which
much
is a
has
recurring
occurred. This
theme in
kid is
this.
going to be in therapy for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, what his dad does to him later in this episode is frankly criminal. But for now, we wake up in a plane. There's some plotting that's been going on.
This plane is like, well, Dad, where are we? And he's like, well, I guess we're flying across the ocean, son. And
must be some kind of gas.
And Nigel,
He's right on both counts. Come on.
That's right, AJ.
Yeah, he is right,
So Nigel, the man in the black gloves, comes through. You're going to have to go see this guy, Maxime, who is definitely not Blofeld.
They asked the question, how did you find us? To which I was like, do you mean in the train that only goes one direction? How could they have possibly figured out where you were going?
I do have, well, I mean, he could have just been on the same train the whole time and probably was. But I guess it's just also like, at this point, I felt like there's some connective tissue that should be here that's just missing.
Okay, the heroic father is a CIA agent. Which I guess the then vice president of the United States had run the CIA.
Allegedly. That memo written by George H.W. Bush was a totally different George H.W. Bush. Who, like, he maybe died or something, but yeah, it's different guy.
He hated jelly bean. No, that's Reagan.
The idea of it being a non-aligned evil entity it is sort of an interesting neutral kind of thing for right-wing Christian entertainment to take. Like they're not Soviets. They're not. They're not the Russians.
Explicitly.
It would be interesting if, say, Focus on the Family was maybe trying to build some relationships within the Soviet Union through their international arm. It would also be interesting if the wife of the Secretary of State was on the board for Focus on the Family.
Are you implying that Focus on the Family and Adventures in Odyssey helped end the Cold War?
I am not implying that, but I am implying that they might have a lot to do with Yeltsin being the guy to come into power instead of Gorbachev holding it. So I came across an article in the LA Times a long time ago. I think I was just trying to look up stuff about Focus on the Family and communism. And I found this LA Times article from July of 1991 that was like, Focus on the Family is working right now on making a trip to Russia in August of this year, which is August of 1991. And the main thing that Dobson is saying is like, oh yeah, well, we're working on this. We're bringing a senator. We're bringing 2 congressmen. We've translated some Adventures in Odyssey episodes. We've translated some of my radio broadcasts and hired a Russian actor to play me and other Russian actors to play my guests and just like do the transcript verbatim in Russian.
Oh, weird.
There's a magazine, a Soviet magazine called Semya magazine, Family magazine. That then
they should focus on those.
That then did a serialized publication. So like, once a month would do a chapter out of a Dobson book. I couldn't see which book it was. I'm assuming it was Dare to Discipline.
It's probably Dare to Discipline.
Or the what is it? The willful, strong-willed child. So all of this ostensibly was to teach the Soviets all about what having a family is. Because every Russian woman has 8 abortions and everyone is divorced and no one raises their kids. Sidebar, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the childbirth rate drops, the divorce rate rises, and the marriage rate drops significantly. Fun. Aside from that, everything was fine. August of 1991, when we talk about the USSR, kind of an important month, right? Because that's when there was a coup d'etat against my friend and yours, Mikhail Gorbachev. He was taken in by hardliners, kind of confined to his home, while Yeltsin sort of ran his way back to the White House in Moscow and shored up even more power for himself. And after the coup, which was only like 3 or 4 days, it was kind of a flaccid little fart of a thing. Gorbachev just had no standing anymore as a politician. He didn't have the backing of the people or the establishment. And Yeltsin was the guy at that point. So this happens at the exact same time that James Dobson and Jim Daly and all these other Focus on the Family people are in town. Interesting. And I wanted to make sure that this actually happened while they were there. And Jim Daly has wrote about it no less than 4 times.
Wow.
On his personal blog. One of them begins with, I've seen government overreach and oppression firsthand. I was in Moscow in August of 1991 when President Mikhail Gorbachev was placed under house arrest. It was a failed coup attempt orchestrated by hardline communists who opposed his ideas for reform. Russian citizens were told that Gorbachev was ill. In reality, he was being held hostage. And then he goes down about how wokeness and critical race theory are going to do the same thing to us, and then quotes Rod Dreher. And Jesus God.
Sweet.
So our intelligence agencies have done this sort of thing before, right? There's the Louis Armstrong tour of Africa, which was basically just a front for regime change operations to be carried out in the Congo and elsewhere. And here it does not seem to be any different. I've never seen any article that explicitly links Focus on the Family because I don't think anyone writing about this ever cares enough about Focus on the Family. But there is a Seymour Hersh article in The Atlantic from 1994 that makes it very clear that the U.S. knew this coup was being brewed up, was employing NSA code breakers. NSA is supposed to be a domestic agency, not an international agency. That's why we have the CIA. We'll get into more of that later. And the NSA codebreaker, so they knew months and months and months in advance. Apparently, Gorbachev was like not very friendly with the Bush administration at this point, and was not really accepting some of the intel that they were giving him. And according to Hersh's sources, they said that they just handed it to Yeltsin, quote, on a silver platter. He was very cooperative. Again, he was a guy that they were fond of at that point. But then at this point, it was like, OK, yeah, American man, Yeltsin. He's the guy that we want. He's the guy that we need. I'll read a little paragraph from that article. Having what the intelligence community calls a special relationship with a senior Russian official was no longer a novelty by the spring of 1991, when NSA intercepts and other intelligence persuaded some top White House aides, among them Robert M. Gates, then the Deputy National Security Advisor, that a hardliners coup was coming against a weakened Mikhail Gorbachev. The president, an admirer of Gorbachev, and his senior advisors eventually decided that contact should be made with the Soviet leader's main rival, Boris Yeltsin. George Bush thus was doing precisely what Bill Clinton's critics today accuse him of not doing. This was written in 1994, reaching out to potential new leaders. It should be noted at the time, Yeltsin was viewed as being more strongly committed than any other Russian leader, including Gorbachev, to Western-style democracy and economic reform, and thus was a far more attractive alternative than the hardline opposition leaders are today. Yeltsin made his second trip to Washington in June of 1991, and Gates asked a ranking senator to take him aside during a formal reception at the Soviet embassy and ask his view of U.S. intelligence about coup plotting. Quote, "We went off in a quarter, and I raised it with Yeltsin. The senator, who did not wish to be named, told me, 'Are we being overwrought about the coup?' He said, 'Absolutely not. There will be a coup before the end of the calendar year.'" This is Yeltsin saying this. "Gorbachev doesn't believe it, but I am preparing for it."
There's an implication that Yeltsin was essentially controlled by the CIA, that they ran his government.
It is so clear when you look at this stuff, the way that these things are likely connected. I mean, you can't explicitly say, oh yeah, Focus on the Family was involved in that coup. But also it is so interestingly coincidental that they were there at that time. And it's also interesting that Adventures in Odyssey repeatedly venerates American intelligence. Now, some of this is just Phil Lawler being the guy who he is. He has a very
real John Krasinski type.
Exactly. We're doing our genre stories. One genre is spy stories, right?
Yeah. And that's one of his favorite genres.
Yeah.
It certainly crossed my mind that it was a strange choice, maybe not a strange choice, that the father was so rooted in a real intelligence agency and was playing a Bond type when CIA agents, in reality, I think are a lot more banal and they're more the Graham Greene kind of quiet American. You know, there's, I mean, Catspaw maybe is a good name because the quiet American is sort of a dupe. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, you know, looking at this show as a form of propaganda, I think is not an unfair thing to say about it. You know, whitewashes what the CIA does for sure and makes them seem like a fun kind of adventuresome figures of genre and adventure stories. But that the CIA really, and certainly in arts and letters in America, you know, again, not to be peddling conspiracy theories or anything, but you know, they were funding, you know, Jackson Pollock and you know, the University of Iowa's
Writers' Workshop.
Workshop. So that there's a kind of shaping of culture, both abroad and domestically. And as silly as this show is, I mean, like it I'm sure that this fits the bill.
And I think there's a very particular culture that exists within the CIA and the NSA that when we get to the end of this episode, we'll talk about a little bit more. So let's get back into it.
So we're still on a plane. We're still on a plane headed for London. There is something on the plane that I need to point out, which is that the henchman for Blofeld, I'm not Blofeld, Maxine.
Yes.
He at the
Nigel,
end of,
the man with the black gloves.
The man with the black gloves. At the end of every single one of his lines, he says Catspaw. He just says Catspaw over and over and over again.
That's true, AJ.
Yes, it is his name. I guess you know what? To be fair, it is technically his name.
It's important that we know who he's talking to, AJ.
At all times. It is maddening. And I do want to point up another thing, that like the structure of this episode is not inherently terrible. A father and son estranged from each other over the death of a mother, and they go on an adventure together to bond. It's called a Goofy movie, and it fucking rules.
Goofy is also an intelligence asset.
It's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no waterfall that they go over in this one. Instead, they end up in a skyscraper, I guess.
Goofy is in the corner of the Zapruder film going, Fjord.
I do actually want to mention, since you brought up Indiana Jones, Chaz, I know you're a fan of young Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
There is a series of novels now called Young Whit. And the design of the covers is basically just to do young Indiana Jones.
Oh my gosh.
But with John Avery Whittaker.
What kind of does he get into? I mean, the gist of that show was that he would find himself in historical events, meeting historical characters. Is that kind of what that?
No, I don't think Whit ever meets historical characters, but he does do some archaeology stuff.
Oh, well.
That would be fun. Like Whit meets, John F. Kennedy and then spray paints a really big target on the back of his head before he drives out to Daly Plaza.
Donald Duck goes, So I'm just doing Kingdom Hearts, but for like U.S. historical events.
I'm going to read the log line real quick from one of these Young Whit books from the AO Wiki.
Oh, God.
In Young Whit and the Phantasmic Confabulator, the fourth book in the series.
The Infernal Machine. Yeah.
Young Johnny Whittaker
like
tries to save Duke University basketball, unravel a kidnapping.
What? Oh, wow. What?
And begin to develop his most famous invention. He also learns more about the amazing cloth left to him by his mother.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we've left this plane. We are in the penthouse from Deus Ex. There is an old man in a case somewhere being frozen. Yep. And the penthouse, well, here's a big feature about it.
Well, I'll give him this. He's got a beautiful view. You can even see Big Ben from here.
Wow, we're pretty high up.
Uh-huh.
Hey, look. There's some guys a couple floors down washing windows on one of those, what do you call them?
Scaffolds.
What?
It's called a scaffold. And they are not just washing windows. They are coating them with special chemicals that deflect microwave transmissions.
I do love that.
How good to see you again.
I love when my scaffolding reflects microwave transmissions.
Man, I hope that's a Russian accent.
I think it's supposed to be.
Yeah, his name's Maxime.
This is Maxime. He's definitely not Blofeld, right? And that's just Hal Smith, obviously.
Yeah.
It's funny that it's Eastern European voice.
Hal Smith and Will Ryan as the villains of this episode. That's cute.
Yeah. Oh, I could have sworn it was Tony Jay playing the bad guys.
No, Tony Jay only did the cartoons. He never
Really?
did the radio show because they had Earl Bowen for the radio show.
Oh, man.
And it is funny how his Russian accent teeters on the border of Mexican occasionally at a couple point in this.
It's also it's also a little bit Jewish. It's a very strange accent.
He's like Watto from the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just offensive.
And so this is, of course, where we introduce the Piranha Tank. Which is
We've
from
been
You
hearing
Only
it
Live
bubbling.
Twice.
Yeah.
It is explicitly that is just straight up from You Only Live Twice. But the Terry smashes the Piranha Tank, I think.
Yes.
It's not entirely clear.
He says it in the next scene, or like the little closing scene. He says, you did a great job smashing that Piranha Tank. And then he like kicks someone in the nuts, or he steps on their foot. You can't kick someone in the nuts in a Christian entertainment, but you can step on their foot.
Yeah. And also those henchmen, they never see the child stepping on their foot coming, even though that's the only way a child has ever escaped a henchman in the history of time.
Scotland Yard! We have the building surrounded!
Too late. Oh, boy.
Drop your weapons! You're under arrest!
No. Foiled again, Nigel? No, this time, cat's paw. I may have lost, but so have you. You're going over!
So now it's the Lion King.
And as we heard, Dad has gone over the edge of the building.
He's over the edge.
But
I bet he's okay.
You landed on the scaffold.
Push them up, boys!
Well, with the help of these two fine gentlemen,
You mean those window washers are really agents?
two of the finest. Boys,
Sure,
meet
why
my
not?
son, Terry. Terry?
I broke every
this is
bone in my
Don.
body landing on the scaffolding. But
Hi.
I kept that little part because Dave Arnold is the guy who says hello, Terry, at the end. He's being drowned out by the wind there, but he's doing the nozzle voice when he played Jesus. It's like it's like, hi, hello, Terry.
I also just love the scaffolding coming back like that. It's like thrown in so haphazardly earlier in the episode, like that scene in Wayne's World where it's like it seemed extraneous at the time, but
no, this is Chekhov's scaffolding, right? It's very important. Right. We get a solid like 2 minutes of completely unnecessary exposition about how they set up this fall intentionally to work out that way, and it's like we didn't need this, but what we do get is Dad having an opportunity to retire from the CIA.
I told you on the train, you're the most important thing in the world to me, Terry. And from now on, I plan on spending as much time with you as I can. And I promise it'll be more exciting than this past summer.
I don't know if I can handle any more excitement. I can't wait to tell everyone at Whit's End about this.
Sorry, lad, but I'm afraid you can't do that.
What? What do you mean? Why not?
It's, one of the hazards of getting involved with the CIA, son. We'll have to what you know now is secret.
You mean I just had the greatest adventure of the summer and I can't tell anybody about it?
I'm sorry, son.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
The father tells this child, you are the most important thing in the world to me.
Yes.
So that's why I just traumatized you by throwing myself over a building and made you think I fucking died.
Right.
This is awful. There is no conflict between the father and son in this, which is very strange to me because the father apologizes while they're on the train and says, I'm sorry that I haven't been able to connect because of your mom. And the kid's like, oh, that's fine. You're in the CIA, so I get it entirely. And it's like, no, this should have been a fight. They should have been like constantly at each other's throats until he went over the side. And then it's like, oh yeah, now I understand your worth. I love you, Dad. I'm so sorry this happened. And then maybe be a little bit mad that he faked his death and had to traumatize him. Like he could have let the son know that this was all a bit.
He could have waited for a minute and let the scaffold guys just come up with their guns while Scotland Yard was already raiding the building, right? Like he did not need the little Aladdin moment of jumping off the balcony.
I think that's an interesting point, though, about like the tension between what focus on the family will allow versus what good drama looks like. Not just in the sense of the stupid fucking spy bullshit, which we've talked about, but also just relationships between parents and their children, because the parent can never be undermined, right? They are always the sole source of authority. They're the credible authority figure.
Yeah. Well, and in there's even I can't remember if it's at the end or where exactly it is, but it's revealed that the mom knew that the father was a CIA agent also and kept that a secret from the son. And the son's like, okay, it's just, it's not really, I mean, I guess this kid is sort of like, what, his whole worldview has been sort of blown up in this episode, but he does sort of just go with it. And I don't know. It just feels a little like a missed opportunity.
Well, and I feel like in other shows that have done this, where your dad's like secretly really cool, like that's the moral of the story, where it's like, you may think that your parents are pretty boring people, but they're actually interesting. They have a full life. They do cool things. They have thoughts, that belong to themselves. They're not just your parents 24 hours a day. But then with this episode, after a little sign off, Chris comes in, as she is wont to do, and she lets us know what the message of this episode is.
Wow, that was some adventure. But although it was just a story, the fact is that sometimes people just aren't what they seem. They may have secrets that can hurt our country, like Maxine. Or they may know secrets that can protect us, like Terry's dad. But even if there are a lot of things going on around us that we don't know about, we still shouldn't be afraid. Why? Because God knows about all those things, even if we don't. And what's even more important, he's using all of it to work his perfect will. Like it says in Romans 8:28, God works in all things for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose.
So first message, things can happen in this world that are scary and confusing, but God will always look out for America. The second message is, sometimes your parents are going to end up being CIA, and you know what? That's fine.
Right.
Like it really seems to be driving home that your parents actually might be spies, and you as a young evangelical need to understand that we're just very overrepresented in this field. It's us and the Mormons and your parents very likely, like so many of the people who come here to focus on the family and work with us, might be assets.
It does seem to be drawing a a connection between the intelligence agencies and God, which I think is often done much more cynically in things like John le Carré. But in this, it seems to be a much more paternalistic message, which is that it's okay. There are people out there who do know everything. Yeah. And you don't need to know everything. I remember watching this interview with Jesse the Body Ventura, where he's just like, everyone knows that Obama's mom was a CIA agent. And it's like, what? Everyone knows that?
What a Lawler episode this was.
Oh, and we've got another one on the way. We're about to jump forward 6 years from 1988, which is when this episode actually premiered, to 1994.
Yep.
This is episode
Whit's dead again, folks. We just had to do that quick flashback. That's all.
So this is episode 290, A Name, Not a Number, part 1, November 26, 1994. Once again, Phil Lawler. So Lawler's been cooking for 6 years now, and I think you can see maybe improvement is the wrong way of putting it, but you can see that his writing style has at least developed.
It's more sophisticated. Yeah, it's
sure.
It feels better to listen to. Yeah,
they haven't solved the Odyssey problem of having a two-parter that shouldn't be a two-parter, but sure, yeah,
exactly.
Let's say that it's developed a bit. Like, I don't know, man.
I have very strong memories of part 1 and remembered almost nothing from part 2. I remember that at some point it was back in Odyssey, and then there was a little twist at the end, but like that one doesn't stick out at all.
So at the beginning of this episode, we meet Tasha. Tasha is a new guy.
Yeah.
And she's talking to someone named Headman, which it's the most Hideo Kojima thing ever. But yeah, we get a little bit of background on what she's doing.
Yeah, this is totally in media res. We just see her up to her shenanigans, and I've dropped us in about a minute later than that.
That's everything, Tasha.
Good. Now, I need you to do one more thing, Molly. Mail this package for me.
Mail? It's not going to the embassy?
No, it's going to Odyssey.
Where's that?
In the United States.
But wait.
Hey, Molly, please, no questions. Just take the package, then meet me at the rendezvous.
All right, Tasha.
Use the tunnel exit in the storeroom. It's a bit longer, but it's safer.
What about you?
I'll leave as soon as I delete some files on the computer and dismantle the transmitter. What's the matter?
Tasha,
don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. Now get going.
Right. See you there.
First, the computer.
Oh.
File manager.
All right.
Search
all right.
all files containing TA418.
TA418.
Tasha, are you here?
Great. Yes, I'm here. Hello, Doctor. How are you today?
Fine. I'm always fine when I return to beautiful Geneva.
Some TA418 Doctor. I know that Doctor. That's the devious Dutchman. That's Dr. Regis Blackgaard.
My God. So Chaz, you heard this here.
Yes.
You heard this evil sounding man. What was your initial impulse like, oh, wow, this is the bad guy? Because I feel like they set that up that way, but maybe it doesn't read that way if you don't know.
Oh, he's British. He's got to be.
Right. Yeah,
he's got the
good point,
same
good
kind of Tony J sound. He's got in fact, I wondered if it were him playing a different, it turned out it wasn't Tony J in the last episode either, but that's kind of the bad guy sound.
Yeah, so this is Earl Bowen, who you might know from the Terminator movies. He's also the voice of LeChuck. He's in a number of video games, but he is...
You might also know him as the principal from California Dreams, starring our friend J. Anthony Frankie.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now that you've said that, he does sound a lot like LeChuck.
Yeah. Well, and it's Tony J and Earl Bowen basically had kind of the same voice. And so you just got one or the other. I think Tony J had a little bit more cachet because of the big Disney roles or something that he got, which is why they got him for the Odyssey cartoons. But Earl Bowen's just so good.
This kicks us off to the races right away. You know, we've got the stakes. We got Tasha. She's cool. She's an agent or whatever.
She is played by, she went by the name Christy Nimitz on this show. Her professional name as a voice actor was actually Connie Zimmett. She was a very successful voice actor, did shitloads of commercials, did a lot of 70s children's albums where they would do like studio albums but they would do music from like Disney's Pinocchio or You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. If you ever came across that weird recording of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown that wasn't linked to a production.
I had some of those 45s. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so why did she use a stage name for this show?
That's a good question. She may have, this was not a union production, so she may have been skirting her AFTRA agreement by doing this. But she's interesting because she was doing off-Broadway and doing voiceover stuff and then moved to Florida and then basically built the entire voiceover industry in Florida when she moved down there. Yeah, I was reading her obituary from 2009. And like, she's a big deal. And I've come across I was just looking her up. I came across a number of voice actors on like LinkedIn who were like, oh yeah, I trained with Connie Zimmett, who was like the greatest voice actor I've ever known. So she's a very highly respected person. And she played Tasha. She makes a few appearances over the next few years in the 90s.
Regis Blackgaard is here to pick up a doll, apparently.
Yep.
You know, this doll reminds me of my youth. Not that I played with them, you understand, but my sister had one just like this.
So he totally played with dolls. He's gay coded. He's definitely a queer character, just like his twin brother Edwin.
And so Tasha and Blackgaard are suddenly in that shop confronted by a guy named Mustafa.
Excuse me.
You will stay.
I beg your pardon?
I said you will stay.
Mustafa, why'd you do that? He doesn't know anything. He's just one of my customers.
Now he is a hostage, as are you.
Blackgaard really seems like such a different man. He's so
really
nice.
Turned over a new leaf.
Yeah, he's getting. Yeah. He's just.
So Mustafa, just gonna go out on a limb here. White guy?
Yes. This is once again Will Ryan.
Yes. No. Yes. Will. No.
This situation here with Mustafa is ushering in the day of the Red Scorpion. I guess. I'm just imagining somebody playing a tape of an Adventures in Odyssey episode to Edward Said and his brain just exploding immediately.
I thought you were going to say to Osama bin Laden. And
his brain even better.
Also.
Even better.
That was on the list of things that they recovered at the CIA outpost was Adventures in Odyssey albums 21 through 27. For some reason, he just wasn't a big Hurlinger fan. So after the search for Whit. Yeah, right there, right next to the Howard Zinn. And all the pornos.
Who's going to save the day? From here, we cut right over to Jason Whittaker.
Ooh. Yes, Tom, I'm packing up the last of my stuff right now. No, just leave it there at Whit's End. It's all marked Jason, so no one will bother it.
Oh, so we've met Jason before, very briefly, when Whit fucking died the first time and came back.
Right.
Different actor. It was a different actor playing him that time. Somebody didn't come back. This actor is Townsend Coleman, a guy with a lot of credits to his name, but is probably best known as the voice of this.
Here's why summer being over is a good thing. Because now we get new comedy on NBC Thursday. That's cool. We'll finally confirm the big baby news on The Office.
Did you pee on a stick? I did. But it was inconclusive.
And we welcome back Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, and SNL in primetime. Plus the new comedy Community, a perfect fit on Thursdays.
He was the voice of NBC comedy from like 2000 to 2010, something like that.
He's also the voice of The Tick and Michelangelo from Ninja Turtles.
That's
Did
true.
you recognize the voice when you heard it, Chaz?
No,
or were you like, I want to look into it?
I looked him up because his voice has that like sort of generic white guy sound. It sounds so generic that I was like, who is this? It just sounds like it's either someone who has never done this before or has been doing only this.
Yes.
I was honestly shocked that the credits were like as
extensive,
character driven as these are. Like, they were.
He's in character, right? As the generic white guy.
Because a lot of people who do like the voice of NBC comedy are not necessarily people that you hear a lot on cartoons and things like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
But he does it all. It's interesting because I've heard him in recent interviews because I've been trying to keep up with what has been going on with Adventures in Odyssey lately.
Why would you do that to yourself?
I'm a fucking prevert. And he's an old man now, so he's very, very gravelly. Sure. And I was kind of shocked going back to this and hearing how much like he's already kind of gravelly here in 1994 too. There's just a little bit of rasp in this that gives him a slight edge beyond just generic white guy.
Michelangelo's a little gravelly too.
Yeah.
You know?
Jason obviously does not stick around for too long, right? Because they just bring on
he
a
sticks
different...
around forever. He never goes
Oh
away.
shit! Okay. He just fully moves it. Because I thought once they brought Whit back, maybe they'd get rid of their Whit replacements.
You might
but
think
I guess
that, but they absolutely did not do that.
They all grow together
in the Lord.
Yeah.
So Jason is en route to Odyssey from Phoenix. He's packing his stuff up, and he gets a call on his special phone.
You'd think the agency's deputy director would have better things to do than play games.
Life can't be all paperwork, 1131. Oh, I guess I can't call you that anymore, can I?
Nope. Now I'm a name, not a number.
Aye, a name that's moving to Odyssey. Must be a very special place to take away my best event analyst.
It sure is.
It is a special place. Nice and quiet. I'm looking forward to a little peace.
Then I don't suppose I can talk you into helping me out on just one more case.
Donovan.
Before you answer, hear me out.
So now we got Alan Young, of course, Scrooge McDuck.
I was a little surprised that there was no helicopter outside and that Jason was not chopping wood when he's recruited for this one last job.
This was actually what I was referring to at the beginning of this episode. It was, as a kid, watching this show, being like, I know that voice. And Alan Young is a perfect example of that, of someone who, wherever you heard him, he always sounded like that.
Yeah.
Alan Young also shows up in Monkey Island in the third one.
He does?
Yeah,
shit.
He's one of the Barbary pirates in the barber shop.
I love that part.
Yeah.
The Scottish one, of course.
One of the singing pirates, yeah.
Yes.
Sounding exactly like this, exactly like Scrooge McDuck.
Jason is going to get pulled in, one more big score, right? This group, Red Scorpion, is transporting a MacGuffin through Geneva. This is the virus or whatever.
They've kidnapped Tasha and they're recording a hostage video with Tasha.
They will not hesitate to rain Rukata death on American and European cities unless their demands are met.
Rukata.
I hate it when Rukata death rains upon me.
It's almost like when I buffalo all over myself.
It is a lot like that.
I did wonder, I thought maybe at first they were talking it was like a vaguely made up jihad situation, that it was this is like a holy war.
I mean, you're not wrong.
It's not off, but they are actually referring to a virus that it is a certain weaponized virus, which is very strange. Because the way it is framed is that it sounds like a concept, like a philosophical kind of concept.
Yeah, Rukata death, yeah. Like ego death. Well, and it's interesting to think about the fact that when we went into Iraq the first time, right, when we did Desert Storm, there was a big fear that Saddam Hussein was going to weaponize anthrax. Just interesting, like how they kind of sublimate all of these anxieties and all of these fears into this story that's basically just the plot of Batman Begins.
We've jumped from 87 to 94.
Yeah.
And it was Cold War and now we're post Cold War. And in the same way that in a much more sophisticated way, John le Carré, people questioned, what is he going to be able to write about now that the Cold War is over? That this show is sort of dealing with much darker material, I feel like, than the first episode. Like terrorists and viruses and
this is much more grounded.
Yeah, these are things. It's not just like guys who are bad looking for a formula and they wear black gloves. Yeah.
Well, and there's also a really interesting moment here too, where after they watch that hostage video, they stop watching it, and Scotty goes, because it's just Scotty. Let's be real. Yeah. He goes he's like blah blah blah. Release hostages. American-made weapons, the normal stuff. Yeah. And it's like, wait, that's a lot to just be hand-waving away. So it's like, wait, what is this? Going back to the point of propaganda and the way that this serves as propaganda, what is this teaching kids to think or not think about with regard to the way that American intelligence and empire works, right?
Yeah.
Don't think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave it to the adults.
And that's exactly what happens, right? Jason goes and meets Miles Philby, who's just another guy. This is Walker Edmiston doing a goofy voice.
But not doing the goofy voice, and he was the voice of Goofy for a while.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's not...
He voiced him in the Zapruder film.
Gorge.
Covered in blood.
There becomes this big thing about like what is Rukuta versus Ruku, and we've got the clips here.
Research on Rukuta. Negative.
Negative? What's that mean?
Well, it means Rukuta doesn't exist in any known language.
I don't know how Jason knows how to spell it, since he just heard it for the first time. He knows it's spelled Rukuta, which is a kind of a weird way, but whatever. And then he realizes that TA is important.
Just a hunch. The ta in Rukuta and the TA on the scrap of paper might be related. I'm going to just try Ruku. R-U-K-U. Aha! Pay dirt.
What is it?
Oh, it's not good. Ruku is a virus that attacks the body's central nervous system, causing rapid and systematic deterioration. It's fatal.
Delightful.
A man named Hans Tesler developed it for the Rakistani government.
And Red Scorpion stole it from the Rakistanis.
What happened to Tesla?
The Rakistanis disposed of him.
Payment in full.
So we now have a fake country called Rakistan.
And I've never been more bored in my life. Well, dear fucking God,
it's so boring.
I don't care. I don't care. You know what? Here's the thing about Ruku, right? Here's the thing about Ruku. Yeah. You can just keep on feeding it and feeding it and feeding it, and it's never gonna get full.
No.
You know? You could stuff me full of that information. You think I'm not gonna want more, and I could always get a little bit more information about the Ruku. But the minute you start introducing an entirely separate new, like, fake Middle Eastern country, you fucking cowards, just full-throated be racist.
Yeah.
You fucks.
Was this your reaction, Chas?
Well, actually, I was distracted by The Name of the Spy by Miles Philby.
Yeah.
Because do you know this?
Kim Philby.
Kim Philby, very famously a double agent who gave state secrets to the Soviet Union or from MI6 and names of agents, including John le Carré. He was he's sort of the origin story of John le Carré is that he was in MI6 and was outed by Philby. And
oh shit!
And then or he's David Cornwall, I guess was his real name.
Wait, so Chas, are you saying that Philby might have been you're worried at this point that Philby might be a double agent, perhaps?
Perhaps. I mean, just from the name, I was like, that's a tell.
Yeah. I just want to bring up Ruku one more time, AJ. Are you saying you're not excited by Ruku?
No.
Well, AJ, I have some really bad news for you about how things are going to be going for the next year. Because Ruku is very important.
Here to stay.
No. Okay. I know we're going to be talking about Ruku a lot, but I do just want to say one thing that struck me as weird, or at the very least, like inconsistent. Right? Jason goes into the CIA.
I don't think they actually say the name of the agency.
He's an event planner,
but it's the NSA.
Oh, it's the NSA.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's an event analyst.
Yeah, not an event planner.
I did briefly think he was an event planner, which is very, very fun. He hosts all the parties for Epstein. So there's like a point where well, first of all, a Scotsman running the NSA, what is this, Call of Duty?
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
No, the Scotsman, I think, is ESA. I think it's us working jointly with a European intelligence agency that does not exist. That is a made-up name. Yeah.
I just think it's weird.
In Switzerland, which would not allow a European intelligence agency to operate because they are not in the fucking Eurozone, man.
And the Anglosphere, the Five Eyes, right?
Yeah,
the Five Eyes exist to exchange information about stuff that is to do with the Anglosphere. They would not be cooperating with. Oh, they would not be cooperating with other European governments in a so-called unified European security agency. That wouldn't fucking happen. You're not going to have England sharing intelligence with the Germans. That's just not going to happen.
I love that the Five Eyes give you peanuts with your burgers. I think that's such a wonderful little touch. It really makes the restaurant pop.
They give you so many fries that are not great.
I don't mind the fries.
That's exactly the response people have to the fries is, I don't mind them.
Yeah. But I guess the thing that really struck me is that Jason goes to work for the NSA and for the government that killed his brother.
Yes.
And I think that's very interesting that's never reckoned with.
That's an interesting point.
In a good... Oh, it is?
Will
okay.
be, AJ. Yeah.
But Chas,
I love
is that a
that
piece...
you've raised this now.
Is that a piece of the backstory that you're familiar with, Chaz?
I'm not, no.
So basically, Jason Whittaker's brother...
So I'll sit down and tell the story. The Ballad of Jerry Whittaker.
Jerry, that's his name, right? Jerry went to Vietnam and got fucking,
Owned.
killed.
Yeah, really fast.
This was sort of the central traumatic incident that led to the fracturing of the Whittaker family.
Yeah, especially with the youngest, the daughter. Jana.
Did she become a hippie?
She did.
Yes.
Yeah.
She did become a hippie. And
you know where that landed her? She became a single mother.
That's
I
right.
bet she did.
yeah.
Did she become like how was she like weather underground? Like was she?
No, she was just
wish.
occasionally going to a protest.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing
And
that serious.
Dodging real drama, you know.
They do kind of reckon with Whit's beating of her as a child.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, so that is confronted kind of. But the show can't be like beating your children is bad.
Right.
So it's just like what it comes around to is like she's very hurt and has this horrible relationship with her dad. But eventually the moral is just make up with him anyway because he's old and will never change.
Yeah, but then Jason follows in his dad's footsteps.
Exactly.
Right? He's too young to fight in Vietnam, but then he's like, well, I can just become an intelligence agent. I can become an event planner or a code breaker.
And apparently one of the things that he did as a code breaker was playing code breaking games with Tasha. And
sexy.
Jason realizes that Tasha might be sending him a secret message.
So they found out that she was blinking messages out while she was talking in Morse code, right? 1 eye for dot, 2 eyes for dash.
There, that's it. Mustafa's on. Okay, what have we got?
NTRLKNCSTL. It makes no sense.
Oh, yes, it does. Tasha and I used to play this game. One of us would take out all the vowels in a word, and then the other would try to guess what the word is.
But the message is all just these consonants. It is disemboweled. Yep. But yeah, it's like what Jeremiah Denton did in Vietnam when he blinked out the phrase torture and then eventually became a moral majority Republican, got elected to office and supported the Contras later. So obviously he wasn't against torture on principle.
So Chaz, at this point, I again just wanted to check in with you. You're at the edge of your seat, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to make sure. I'm sure that this fictional Middle Eastern country will be treated fairly and sensitively.
Oh, for sure.
By the
yeah. And they
authentically.
When they're translating this message, by the way, it takes years. It takes so long for them to like spell it out and like puzzle it out. I'm like, it's interlocking. It's interlocking. The word is fucking interlocking.
You're in Switzerland. They puzzle over this. Something that always bothered me as a kid listening to this episode is like you hear them work out interlocking. Right. And not in case and tool at the end turns out to be castle, but you don't hear them work out castle. It's like they already figured out. And he's like, oh, yes, there is a castle there. It's like, where did you find castle?
And
walk
so Jason,
me through this. I am 9.
Jason
show your work
to Interlaken Castle and basically does a Hitman stakeout. It really, everything about the sound design of this and the music and everything reminded me of Hitman, like really aggressively.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I wrote down there should be a weird bald caterer just kind of wandering around the castle.
So AJ, it's so fortuitous in its own way that you brought up Jeffrey Epstein earlier because, of course, Interlaken, not the place in Switzerland, but the place in Michigan. Has some very deep ties to Jeffrey Epstein that have never been totally hashed out in public, let's say.
Well, I would caution you perhaps to go with Jason Whittaker's middle name, which is apparently Caution, which is the most boring middle name you could ever imagine. I'm so mad.
AJ,
my middle name is Danger. It should be like exciting. It's fucking Caution?
Wait,
is his middle name?
His real middle name.
It's not really his middle name.
No, I know, but he thinks he sounds so fucking cool. It's like that's delivered like it's like a spy line, and it's like you just said that your middle name is Temperance.
Okay,
for fuck's sake.
So this is something I wanted to talk about actually, and this is something I'm curious about from you, Chaz. Is like the way that he writes, the way that Phil Lawler writes this dialogue, what he thinks cool sounds like.
Again, I was just struck while listening to it by the fact that this was written for children. It just it's so strange to me. It feels like it wants to be, again, going back to the plot of viruses and terrorists and American and European cities being at risk and the Middle East. It just feels like something I would never have watched as a kid. Like or listened to. It sounds like the plot of like a Michael Bay movie or something like that. Except not entertaining.
Right.
There's no explosions.
Because I'm going to describe a few things here that might sound like they could be interesting, but I promise you that they are deeply boring. Jason does a hitman stakeout. He gets seized by Mustafa and brought back to the castle. He ends up in there with Tasha. Tasha exposits about Ruku because we need to know even more about this fucking virus.
Because they have crates of it that they're transporting and they're gonna dump into the Swiss water supply.
Yeah, it's the thing from Deus Ex, right?
Also, Regis Blackgaard is there. It turns out that he's an inside man for the European Security Agency.
There's a fantastic moment here where Blackgaard, after being thrown into the cell, starts talking about Whit. And like a complete fucking moron, Jason gives up his actual identity as well as Whit's current location?
Oh, yeah, right.
Dog shit, OPSEC. What are you doing?
They're all so bad at their jobs.
But Regis is just so apologetic, you know?
Oh, I know. And we
So
get this whole back and forth, right? And then the ESA guys bust in and Blackgaard gets owned.
Yeah, so Regis gets injected with the Ruku virus. I feel like I don't need to play this. It's just like, it's about to be Jason. Jason's going to be like an example for everyone else who's about to get Ruku poisoned. And then Regis jumps in front of the syringe just in time. And then Regis fucking dies.
Whittaker.
Yeah.
I'm right here, sir.
Tell your father.
I love him.
Sorry.
And that's it. Regis is gone forever.
I feel like we shouldn't skip over the fact that the Mustafa's plan is to poison the water supply just because they make such hay of it in the next episode for some reason.
Well, it's important. It's important to the way the virus works, it turns out.
We have to have a couple extra layers of complexity here because of course we do. Look, we'll keep talking about this after the break. I'm pissed off. I hope you all are too.
Yeah, because then we're going to get into a name, not a number, part 2, where we're back in Odyssey, and all of a sudden, the Empire comes home.
Stay tuned, I hope.
Good and hello, listeners. It is me, Pinky, former bodyguard of Dr. Regis Blackgaard, child psychologist, and current member of the greatest European organization that the British are not currently trying to escape, the European Security Agency, or ESA. Have you ever found yourself thinking, I love having my privacy violated, but which could be decidedly more European? Then have I got an organization for you. ESA does everything to keep the citizens of Europe safe. We listen to your phone calls. So join the ranks as a proud members of ESA and stop terrorists from countries that sounds like we just kind of made up in order to instill fear on the hearts of European children everywhere. You will be making a difference, not just in the lives of the children you're frightened, but also in your own. Listeners, if I may speak from the heart, things were not great for Pinky for a long time. After a brief existential crisis caused by choking my good friend Greg to death, I went on a personal journey of self-discovery. Pinky ate, Pinky prayed, Pinky loved. But throughout my many religious fuck travels, I didn't feel like I was getting any closer to myself. Truthfully, it felt like Pinky was running away from Pinky. I joined the ESA because I wanted to help us a people and leave this world better than I found it. But more and more lately, it feels like I'm making things worse. Every day, I listen to all of your weird Alexa orders for anal beads and pineapple Fanta. But I'm slowly coming to the realization that all of that might actually be detrimental to the world. And to my slowly crumbling mental health. I am an emotional landmine about to burst. You are tearing me apart, ESA! Pardon me, listeners. It appears there's someone rapping on my chamber door. Good, hello? Darkness here and nothing more. Oh! And also a telegram. I know what you have done. Stop. And I know the pain you feel in your heart. Stop. If you want to change the world, stop. Come to the town of Odyssey, Ohio. Stop. Lorne Lagorium. P.S. Tell no one. Who the fuck is no one?
Chaz, you know what whipping shitties is, right?
No, I don't.
I can kind of guess.
Well, he didn't ask you, AJ. I don't know what whipping shitties is.
Wait, not even. No, whipping shitties. It's doing donuts. It's
what? Is that a Michigan thing?
No.
Okay, hold on.
It might be an
on.
upper Midwest thing. I know people from Wisconsin call it whipping shitties.
That's a Michigan thing then. There's nothing. Wisconsin doesn't have its own culture. Is it because you do it in a shitty car and you're whipping it around? Or is it because you're shitting? Like while you do it, your shits are getting whipped out.
No.
I don't know the way that you people talk.
Look, we're back. We're whipping shitties.
We're not.
No, we're not. We are not whipping
safely
shitties.
in the confines of our immobile homes. As is Jason Whittaker, it turns out.
That's right. This is episode 291, A Name, Not a Number, Part 2. This was December 3, 1994 was the original air date. Once again, Phil Lawler continuing the saga. And I think you said, AJ, that this is, why the hell is this a two-parter? Why?
No, it has no need to be. They record this entire first scene, I'm assuming in a cave. It's one of the rare sound L's for this show that I don't know where or how they are in space in this scene.
Blackgaard knew the risks.
He didn't die in vain, Tasha. He helped prevent Red Scorpion from infecting the world with a deadly virus.
That's just it. He didn't.
What do you mean?
I mean, the world was never in any danger from that virus.
What are you talking about?
She's talking about TA-418.
Okay, I'm a little confused here. How does TA-418 fit into all this?
When I ran tests on the virus, I discovered that Ruku is extremely unstable. It can only live inside the vacuum-sealed containers Red Scorpion hijacked. If it's exposed to even the slightest amount of air, it dies instantly. In fact, the only way to get the virus is to have it injected directly into your system.
But Red Scorpion was going to dump it into Geneva's water supply.
That's because they thought it was deadly as it was. But without TA-418, they could dump it in the water supply until doomsday and it wouldn't hurt a fly.
Until Bloomsday. Yeah, sure. It's important. This is really important.
June 16th already.
It's an anaerobic virus. So you can't distribute it in this fashion. I'm gripped. I am fascinated.
I just love the whole thing was a red herring.
Yeah.
Okay.
None of that mattered.
Scorpion.
A red scorpion.
I think that's the thing that's so infuriating from a storytelling perspective is like, okay, so literally nothing that just happened mattered at all.
Yeah.
That entire first episode did not matter.
Excuse me, a major recurring character died.
Well, but he didn't, though. But he didn't.
Yes, he did. He's dead.
From his veins.
No, but he's so obviously not actually dead.
Josh,
but
he's
not,
dead.
though.
It didn't get exposed to air. He died. He got Ruku. It killed him.
It's gotta create the triangle, Tasha, Whittaker, and the Great Dutchman of 1812.
Well, so here's where we go and figure out this whole Tasha Whit connection.
Yeah.
What the records don't show is that no complete formula for TA-418 exists.
How do you know?
Because the T in TA-418 stands for Tasha.
You created it?
I was one of the creators, yes.
So Tasha's just out here making fucking bioweapons. There is no reason for anyone to be making TA-48 and 418 unless it's to create a weaponized version of a mostly like harmless virus.
No, Brian, I see you, I hear you, I'm holding space for you, but it's TA. Who does the A stand for?
That's a good question, Josh. Let's see.
So when I closed down the operation, I had Molly mail it to the only person I was certain I could trust.
My father. Why him?
Remember I told you the T in TA-418 stands for Tasha?
Sure does.
Well, the A stands for Avery.
Hold on. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Why?
John Avery Whittaker. Your father helped me develop the compound through his applesauce program.
This is
applesauce.
Fucking evil. This is like so Whit was the guy who figured out you could use Zyklon B on humans. We just don't want that to fall into the wrong hands.
Of course.
Hey, you know what TA could also stand for? Tasha.
Oh.
It's just the first two letters of her name.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
It stands for tits and ass.
It does. It stands for Tasha Avery.
Why his middle name? Why not TJ?
It's a secret, AJ. You dumb bitch. He's trying to hide his identity.
Then why isn't she? Like,
They're tripping you up, man. It's a fucking code.
This is so stereotypical Lawler, because this is what a dumb person thinks smart people do.
Yeah.
Smart people don't do
Wait
this
till
shit.
you find out what the 418 means, AJ. You don't find it's just number.
Do they steal a loaf of bread? Like what?
I feel like they're planting the seeds for the next generation to not take COVID-19 seriously.
Yeah.
Yes!
So fun fact, Paul McCusker, the other main writer of Adventures in Odyssey, in like 2012 co-wrote a book about vaccine researchers in Africa creating a new virus that becomes a global epidemic.
John Stewart loves that book.
Is the implication that the benevolent sort of patriarch of Odyssey is also creating bioweapons? Or is he just...
So they found this virus, Ruku virus, which can be very deadly, but if it's exposed to air or water, etc., blah, 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 it's dead. But with this formula, they have figured out how to weaponize it in the same way that we had figured out how to like weaponize anthrax, things like that in the past.
And how the CIA created AIDS, right?
So Whit was a part of Firm Hand, and now it's just gotten a little bit out of control.
Well, and this is really interesting, right? Because it's not, but
it's fascinating. I'm gripped.
There's something here.
I'm buffaloing all over the place.
I know you are, Brian. There's something here about the way that the United States government can be trusted with power like this. The problem only comes when it's outside, because we hear that, yes, they were doing this work for the United States government. And Jason even says something like, well, I don't like to talk about, I never talked to my dad about the work that he did with the U.S. government because I didn't want to know. Or something.
we didn't want to blow the secrets, right?
So it's this idea of like this benevolence that exists when it's the U.S., but the moment that it falls into foreign hands, forget about it, which is honestly very similar to the logic of something like 24, for instance.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not really all that unique to a show like this. The idea of American exceptionalism is sort of like in a ton of entertainment, both for kids and, well, a ton of it for adults too.
It's like, we put this together. It would be so bad if the wrong people got this. What is the upside? What happens when the right people get it? People are still going to be dying from a virus that previously no one was getting sick from. Like,
but they won't attack us because they'll know it's a preventative
weapon. If you
weapon,
are making
right?
this kind of disease on purpose, you should not only be killed, but you should be publicly executed in front of millions of hooting and hollering cretins like me to be an example to the rest of humanity.
Because this is a war crime. Like they are creating biological agents of mass destruction.
There's I guess the danger of thinking too hard about all this stuff, but it does make you wonder how hard they were thinking about this stuff when they were writing it.
Oh, they were very, very particular about
I think you're right,
every
AJ.
word choice that they used. Every interview that you find of these two is just, it's so clear that they think that they have crafted this masterpiece of children's storytelling. But not only that, but that it is important work, right? And that
that's why they translated it into Russian, so that Russians can finally build families, which they'd never done before.
Right, never once. They couldn't figure it out.
They couldn't focus.
Well, what happened was they would have a kid, but inside that kid would be a smaller kid, and then they would just keep going and going and going and going.
Right.
But it was.
I mean, it's in Tolstoy, right? All unhappy families are the same. All unhappy families are different in every way. And I mean, if they'd only focused, they would have been.
They would have been
families.
so much happier.
I am always saying this.
Why are there so many smaller mothers inside of my large mother?
I want one that's approximately the size of an average human mother. No smaller, no larger.
We're doing great, folks. We're not completely insane.
This is fine. We haven't been exposed to any sort of virus.
We've only been exposed to the woke mind virus.
Yeah, but to your point, Chas, like it is. They did put a lot of time and thought into this. Yeah. It's just that there was a limit to that thought.
Yeah. It's just that they're not very smart people.
Right.
Because I listened even to like this 3-hour long. Don't ask me why. I have a disease.
You talk about the shit. I did not subject myself to that. Come on.
But it was like Phil Lawler debating the finer points of a really stupid episode he wrote with a fan. And when I say debate, I mean debate. He was going into it. And it's like, dude, you're like 60 something years old and you are like talking to an 18-year-old. What are you doing? But he really, truly, Phil Lawler believes that what he is creating is the absolute zenith of the format, that he is doing something that has not and could not be done by anyone else, and that he is presenting it to you freely. With his heart, he's offering it to you promptly.
And what I will say is that in terms of the field that he's in, he is offering the best that Christian children's entertainment or Christian entertainment. The stuff for adults is worse than the stuff for kids.
I would argue that VeggieTales is better than Odyssey.
That's true. VeggieTales is an outlier.
In terms of Christian entertainment, it is the zenith. But that's also a visual one, right? You're right. In terms of like audio dramas, this is
in terms
sort
of
Christian
in terms
audio
of
dramas.
everything that is being made for Christians that's not VeggieTales. We'll just circle VeggieTales because that is something that I think did step up. This Kirk Cameron can't compete with this. Jerry Jenkins can't compete with this.
Yeah, and I will say that actually Jason gives me Kirk Cameron vibes a little
generic
bit because
guy,
he is sort of a generic white guy
for sure
thing, and it and this episode asks us. It sort of thrusts on our backs that we now have to take Jason seriously as a sexual. It thrusts on our backs, and releases a sticky goo that we now have to deal with, which is that Jason Whittaker fucks.
Yeah.
And he does
for sure.
fuck specifically.
For sure.
He really wants
he
to
thrusts
fuck
on her
Tasha.
back. Yeah, he Supermans that hoe. And another thing, I don't think I clipped it.
But he wants to marry her.
Yeah, he does. He does want to marry her, and that actually becomes a big problem later. The reason why Whit was so important in the development of TA 418. We're getting in the plot again, AJ. I'm sorry. I saw your eyes just droop like you were having a stroke. Is
that's not a bit. They actually
is that Whit's contribution came through using computers to develop a protein folding software, and he developed a program for that computer. Say it with us at home, folks, because I know you know what we're about to say. That program was called
Applesauce.
Oh,
and
that
applesauce
sauce.
in the episode that was about originally was pretty obviously just an analogy for the tree of good and evil, right? And as we'll also remember, in terms of what the program did, well, you could turn it on and you could push a button and it would make the trains go really
it would
fast.
make the blender freak out, and then it would go to phase 2.
Which was to develop a virus. It starts doing like fucking protein folding and genome sequencing or something.
A multitasker, He's like, I need to handle, I need to do diagnostics at Wit's End, and then also make a bioweapon. AJ, did this feel like we opened a door for you? You finally learned what applesauce was. Are you so excited?
Can I be really honest? I was so bored I didn't even hear applesauce.
How do you feel now?
How do I feel now? Well, I guess blenders are a gateway drug to I don't know, war crimes is I guess the next thing. I don't care. Like the other thing is that ultimately
you better start caring, AJ.
No, I know. I know I should.
Start believing in war crimes, Miss Turner.
I'm in one. But it does, that part of it is deeply uninteresting to me. The inner confines of Wit's End as a House of Leaves double is what's interesting to me. The unknowability of Wit's End, and actually what gets
they relate to each other. You will find out that they will relate to each other, AJ.
Oh boy. But the thing is that what's disappointing is finding the answers, right? This is sort of this is the Lost syndrome in a lot of ways, which is it's just once they start actually solidly answering things. And actually, to be fair, I think Lost does a pretty good job of answering most of its major mysteries. I think that's fine, but I'm feeling what a lot of fans of Lost expressed when the finale happened, which was just oh, we want answers, and then they're giving them, it's oh, not these.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I feel about this, which is just oh, okay, so applesauce, this is, okay, this gets to a larger point, and I was thinking about this earlier today.
Okay.
Which is that the Imagination Station is kind of a bullshit machine.
Yeah.
Because it's actually a misnomer because it's not about using your imagination.
No.
Right.
Not really.
No. Right.
It's about remembering and reenacting old historical events, things that happened, using your imagination to still live in the realm of reality.
Yes.
And what makes me so mad is that that's not what the imagination is for. But it leads to this thing where like now we're getting answers for applesauce and they're the most, they're banal in that they exist in the real world. There's nothing mythical or fun about it. It's just like, how can we turn imagination into fucking paperwork? And Chaz...
Well, I was going to say that I think it's because the genre, even though this is like an adventure story and there's like fantasy and science fiction and all and thriller aspects to it, at the end of the day, it's capitalist realism or capitalism. You know, it's not. You can't imagine too grandly. Or you start straddling into alternative ways of doing things, which we can't question too hard. It reminds me a bit of DuckTales and kind of the Karl Barksy stories of, you know, Uncle Scrooge, the benevolent capitalist adventurer, and his family, who he takes on adventures, and every episode or every comic story starts with some setup that frequently has nothing to do with anything that's occurred before. If it involves an invention from like Gyro Gearloose or involves some escapade that is related to one of the other family members, like Gladstone Gander or something. It all kind of starts in Duckburg, but kind of goes off into the world. The difference, though, is that I think with Karl Barks and DuckTales, it was good, and it frequently did involve the imagination. And this, again, it just sort of gets stuck in the weeds. It just really, this episode, man, was really.
I think the point about the limit of the imagination is well made, and the fact is, it also reflects the limits of the imagination of the writers, right?
Yeah,
this is the best that they can come up with.
Yeah, we get a bunch of double crosses. Philby is a double crosser. Mustafa.
You called it, Chaz.
It was right in the name.
Mustafa escaped. He tracked Tasha down. There's this whole meeting at a park, but then Jason drops a little special code to let everyone know what's going on. And Codebreaker 2, Delta 24, all this shit. They go to a gazebo in McAllister Park. AJ doesn't remember any of this, even though he has a whole thing about gazebos and parks.
No, I actually wrote down there's something going on at the gazebo.
They make a Princess Bride reference. Then Jason is like, oh yeah, the formula's in the safe. Let's bring you to the safe. He goes to Whit's office where the safe is. And of course, the computer room is directly behind one of the bookshelves. And then he runs applesauce on them.
Oh! Open the safe. Okay, if that's what you want.
Voice recognition required.
Computer,
who's this guy?
Is Jason
Where's Mabel?
Whittaker. Open
that's a good point.
now.
All of these sound effects are from XCOM. I just wanted to point that out.
Stop it! Tasha, get down! Where are you? What is that? Stop it! Stop it! Ow! Philby. Computer, end program. Sorry about the vase, Dad.
I hope you planned all that.
So some of the action is pretty vague in these episodes. This is just nonsense. What's happening?
What's interesting is like oftentimes in this show they do real Foley.
Yeah,
like where they have guys.
Oh yeah, very dedicated Foley artists.
They'll take like boots and they'll stamp them on the thing to make people watch. These are literally just sound effects from a library. Like I said, I wasn't joking. If you go play XCOM UFO Defense, you will hear all of these sound effects.
But yeah, completely illegible. Like
are these guys getting electrocuted? Apparently the lights are too bright. Is there did he hack a turret? Is a turret shooting? Are they getting hit with bullets? How did the vase break?
Is this Prey? Is this the game Prey 2017? Is there a Typhon stalking the area?
Another thing we should mention is that is what Ruku does too. Another thing we should mention is that Jason is living in Whit's End now. He's refused his father's house,
like Fonzie over the Cunningham's garage.
Yeah, he says there's plenty of room for him because Tom Riley comes in as like mayor and is like, oh, you don't want to live in your dad's house, and he's just Tom Riley. No. Yeah,
that's good.
And he's just like, no, I like. I like masturbating directly above the ice cream parlor.
Is he
it's
living?
what gets me off.
Is he living in the office or is he living in the attic with the old organ in it?
It's not specific.
Is he just sticking his dick in the pipe organ and pulling out and going,
Yes.
Yeah.
Like father, like son, right?
This was my great-grandpappy's old fucking organ, and he passed it down to my grandpap, who passed it down to my pap, and now I'm the last of the line, and I just keep fucking the organ.
Keep it nice and lubed for my son. When he comes of age, he's gonna get the fucking organ.
I'm buffaloing all up in these pipes.
Hey. Philby is the big bad, I guess, but then it turns out that he's not, because after the safe is opened, he gets neutralized. There's something called Philby Enterprises. This is a fucking mess.
Oh yeah, Philby, the whole reason that Philby's doing this is because he wants to start his own syndicate. He wants to break off from Red Scorpion and the European Security Agency and the NSA and everything. It's just like, okay, here's a bunch of stuff happening now.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to take Mustafa in, right? They got him pretty much dead to rights.
Yep.
Right.
But then he makes a daring escape.
Looks like it's over for Red Scorpion, Mustafa.
No! Red Scorpion will never die! Never!
Love that.
Jumps out the second floor window, breaks his ankle, but still manages to make it to the getaway car.
Sounds like he's jumping from 12 stories.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, we are 2 stories up. It's like, a whole 10-foot jump.
No. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing about Whit's End. What happens around it gravitationally is not quite the same as around any other house.
Right.
So he does actually fall for canonically 10 years before hitting the ground.
Yeah.
But to everyone else, it passes in but a second. He lives in a torturous free fall for several
It's like that
decades.
episode of Futurama. Like,
yeah, he's just constantly caught in the loop.
Yeah.
It is weird that they cut him screaming Sic Semper Tyrannis as he was falling and breaking his ankle.
Yeah.
But Mustafa he gets away.
Yeah.
He gets in his getaway car and makes it out of it. And also, it's winter now.
Yes, yeah, they established that it's winter.
It is not possible! You are dead! I gave you the shot myself! Do you think I'd allow you to come near me with the real Ruku virus? No. Abdul here filled the syringe with the vitamin complex. Actually, once I got out of the morgue, I never felt better in my life.
Then you are not working with European security?
Oh, yes, I am. Or was.
Was?
Well, they think I'm dead.
Oh.
Then we can still work together. There is a synthetic compound called TA418. It makes the Ruku virus unstoppable. The revolution can still succeed.
Mustafa. I know about TA418. I've always known.
Earl Bone's
Do you
having
think
way too much
I ever
fun here.
cared about your petty revolution or your mosquito of a group? There is so much more going on here than you can possibly understand or even imagine. But you have fulfilled your purpose. For that, I thank you. Of course, you also stabbed me with a needle. And for that, make it look like an accident, Abdul.
No, wait! I can help you!
Another very confusing bit of action. What's happening here?
We can't afford to have any loose ends lying about.
No!
Goodbye, Mustafa.
No!
So
he's just in a car.
Right.
My, but it's good to be back again.
So what comes out in the little wraparound is that they explain that he was found crashed in his car, like it had gone to the bridge and slipped on some ice and crashed into the river.
Oh, what?
And I don't know what the hell that's how we're supposed to draw that from this.
So there's a line that we just heard that I want to point up in Chaz, and I want to ask you about it.
Yeah.
The line is that Regis Blackgaard says, there is so much more going on here than you possibly understand or even imagine. And this line haunts me, and I'm wondering if you feel similarly about it as a playwright, just in terms of the construction of the sentence. How indicative this is of Odyssey's writing in general.
I actually feel like it's a tell. I think the writers are revealing that they don't know anymore what's going on. You know, I'm sure the process of writing one of these episodes took a weekend.
Oh no, I think it took a lot more than that. If you listen to the interviews,
and unfortunately, I feel like you do get lost, and I'm not sure that it holds together. And I feel like they seem lost to me. In their own plot.
Yeah, no, they're definitely like feeling this as they go along. With the original Applesauce stories, it's like there's no reason to believe it has anything to do with the bioweapon because it was just a MacGuffin. And here it's like Regis is saying, "Oh no, there's so much more to this than you could imagine." And spoiler alert, no, it's
so we never find out more.
No, it's just Ruku. It's still just Ruku. Like that's good enough, honestly. You don't really need it to be more than a virus that could kill everybody.
Right.
No, the Ruku is enough in this, and it's one of those things where, like, I have been guilty of like introducing things that are like. That are very vague. Like it's two characters talking about a thing that they both know about that me as the writer does not necessarily know every avenue that can go, right? Mm-hmm. That is a very good trick. Yeah. But Chaz, I think you're 100% right. It is such a tell when you just kind of vaguely gesture and say, oh yeah, there are secrets.
Oh, you don't know. You don't imagine. You don't understand. What else do you not do?
And it's also I think it just shows the contempt that Lawler has for his audience because he thinks we're all very dumb, and he says it's like
I would amend that actually, AJ. I would say it's not that he thinks that the audience is dumb. It's that he thinks he is so smart. He thinks that as intelligent as the audience is, and he does believe in the intelligence of his audience, he's just a bit smarter. And that's a significant difference, I think.
But I wonder if someone really pushed him to tell us what is really going on here, if he would know. And this reminds me a little of the other cherished children's entertainment of 90s comic books where you'd get some twist at the end of X-Men 356 or something like that.
Right.
Sure. And maybe we'll find out who the real villain was, and then
the next author takes over and like, that was stupid. I don't really want to play with that anymore.
I'm not going to deal with that.
Speaking of things that are stupid that I don't want to deal with, we get Jason's love life comes back in a big way at the end here.
Hell yeah.
We get a line that actually kind of predicts a spy franchise, which I thought was very interesting. She says, Jason, you were born to do this work.
Yeah, she's riding off into the sunset, and he's Mr. Ice Cream Man now. So I wanted to bring up the discussion questions for this episode. The official focus on the family discussion.
I hate these questions so much, dude.
I forgot to mention too with the CIA episode, they actually made little storybooks based on some old Adventures in Odyssey episodes for Chick-fil-A kids meals. And one of them was of the CIA dad episode. Anyway, just think of the various ephemera that are made for these things. So discussion questions for a name, not a number. Parts 1 and 2.
Do it.
Question 1.
Yeah.
Do you think what Jason did for a living is good or bad work for a Christian?
I don't. Do you want us to discuss these questions, Brian?
I want you to give me an answer.
Yeah.
Is it good or bad work for a Christian?
It's bad work for anyone.
Well, and being an event planner is a very noble profession.
Sure.
I think Christians and non-Christians alike can do it.
There's another bullet point here.
Yeah.
Explain your answer.
No, fuck you.
No, not doing that.
Okay. Question number 2. Is there such a thing as a synthetic virus in real life?
Yes.
Explain.
Well, you see,
they're
in
real.
the year 2019.
They're my friend.
Okay, one more question. That's it. One more question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chaz, you have to answer this one.
This is for Chaz.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so Chaz, why do you think some people want to do things to hurt their own country?
They hate freedom.
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's no more complex than that.
That one does not ask you to explain it, so that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm not sure I could.
Well,
every once in a while, it's like when it gets more plot oriented and more like away from little Bible lessons for kids, I'm always like, okay, what's the Bible verse going to be? What are the discussion questions going to be? The Bible verse is just like, nations rise up and conspire, whatever.
Sure,
And the discussion questions, though, they're just so rich here.
That's good shit.
Yeah.
By the way,
get into it.
this episode concludes with Tasha giving Jason a Morse code note saying, I love you.
Yeah.
So, nice.
And he blinks back at her, I know.
Yeah.
We've got one episode left here, and this is episode.
And it is not a doozy. There's barely anything here.
Wow.
So this is episode 293, A Code of Honor,
which I straight up just don't even remember, honestly.
Well, why would you? This was December 17, 1994, written by Paul McCusker. And yes, this is the episode that introduces the concept of the Israelites.
Which, yes, AJ, this will come back.
You know what I think? Okay.
No, I don't, AJ. What do you think?
What do you think?
Okay. So here's the thing. You know, if only there were an example in the Bible of people doing good deeds for each other and not expecting anything in return. If only there was like some guy, Samara. No, I can't. There's just nothing. We have to go with Israelites. We have to fucking co-opt an entirely different culture.
I would love if they called themselves the Samaritans, and then they also like held a really strong belief that the temple should be built on Mount Gerizim.
Well, I think but I always thought the point of the Good Samaritan story was that the Samaritans were Israelites. But the idea was that they were not a pleasant group of Israelites, and that the point of the story was that there actually was one good one.
Yeah, and you would never expect a gang to do good. I'm just saying.
So at the beginning of this episode, Jack comes by Jason's room at Whit's End, where again, Jason is living, to pay him a visit.
Yeah.
Jason is like, I don't need a house. Whit's End is great. It's fine. I love it. And so Jason actually invites Jack to come over the next day and dig through the basement for some stuff that's ephemera, right? Because Jack's got a lot of memories of what playing with Whit was like as a kid. And I'll be honest, I actually kind of liked this first scene.
Good angle, yeah.
It felt lived in, it felt real, and I thought that it was setting something up that did not happen.
No, here you see some of Paul McCusker's like latent Catholicism coming into play, where, you know, he wants there to be angels and visions and things like that. This is also tying things in, and I didn't know this, and I haven't read them still, to the original Adventures in Odyssey novels. At this time, I guess about 2 years earlier, Paul McCusker wrote some novels, one of which is called The Secret Cave of Robin Wood. And so it's like these books are sort of prequels to Adventures in Odyssey. Like they're set a little bit before Connie and Eugene show up. But of course, after Whit's End has been purchased and started. So there's a different lady working at Whit's End. I don't know if Jimmy, the original Jimmy, is part of all of this, but Paul McCusker is bringing that continuity into the fold. He's saying these things are canon and they are part of Adventures in Odyssey on the whole.
And that canon mostly is to do with the Israelites, I'm assuming?
Yeah,
is that something that makes its appearance in the novels?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we get this reminiscing and, you know, they're down in the basement, they're digging through shit. Jack comes across a book and he's like, whoa, I think I saw this in a dream or something.
I don't know what it is. Is it a ledger?
Yeah, it seems to be written in some sort of code. Letters and numbers.
But look at the pages. See?
Yeah, a variety of handwriting, as if several different people wrote in it from time to time. Oh, look here. Some of the handwriting looks young.
A diary maybe, huh?
Yeah, or maybe minutes taken from some sort of meeting. And look there, some of the entries are in Dad's own hand.
I remember when your dad and I were kids, we used to keep a journal of our adventures, but he insisted we write it in a secret code just in case it fell into the wrong hands.
Oh, secret agents.
No, our parents.
John Avery Whittaker, 50 pops coin.
See, is that also Alan Young?
That is also Alan Young. Yeah, that's him doing his
accent.
American/Canadian accent. Yeah. Jack and Whit, they were friends as children. Then there's this book. Jack had a dream about this, but the dream was not him looking at this book with Jason. It was with somebody else. And so we're going to follow whatever this line of intuition is for the rest of the episode.
Jack then is like, yeah, well, what could it be? And Jason's like, well, I could probably crack this code. I know a thing or two about cracking codes because, again, he works for the NSA.
Yep.
So Jack's like, yeah, go for it. And Jason takes the book. So Jack meets up then with Connie, right? They discuss the news in the papers.
Yeah, Connie loves reading her newspaper.
Yeah.
Mayor Tom Riley said he's going to reconsider the zoning regulations for the south part of town, and...
Tom Riley's a yimby?
Yeah, another robbery last night.
Another robbery?
A stereo was stolen out of Donald Milford's car, and his windows bashed in. And the night before that, someone spray-painted the side of the community center. Seems like there's been something almost every night for the past couple of weeks.
Any suspects?
No, but the police figure it was done by a gang. You know, it is so strange. I remember stuff like this happening when I lived in California, but I never expected it in Odyssey.
Kids are listening to jazz music now, and they're all committing crimes.
My God.
Did anyone notice the buildings get taller in Odyssey?
All because of Tom Riley's yimby proposals to get rid of zoning regulations.
Good Lord.
He's building up. He's making a 15-minute city, motherfucker. And this is what a 15-minute city means. Crime.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
God. It's so... The gangs of Odyssey, roaming Odyssey. And just to be clear, Brian, this is not the roaming gang of homosexuals that would go on to
that's
graffiti
decades
the place
later,
in decades later. But it's the same idea, right? Gangs have come to Odyssey.
So Connie mentions a little bit later in this conversation, she's like, we don't really have gangs. Well, there's Rodney Rathbone's gang, the Bones of Wrath.
But they're not a real gang.
They mostly just like hurt children, so that's not as bad as spray painting a fence.
Yeah,
adults should hurt children.
Yeah, they're not committing property crime.
This is the Catholic Church, after all.
They're not committing property crime, which is the highest form of crime that one can commit.
But then Jack says, it starts with these small things and then it gets bigger. So maybe he's right.
Broken windows theory.
Maybe it really is the Bones of Wrath that are doing this. And why are kids joining these gangs anyway? And why are the gangs always bad?
Yeah.
What I don't understand is why gangs always have to be bad.
I don't follow you.
I mean, why aren't there ever any good gangs?
Oh, you mean roving gangs of kids committing random acts of charity and kindness?
Well, yeah, something like that.
Interesting thought. Wish you had an answer.
Join short-term missions. Go on a short-term mission trip, child. Go for a week in World Changers or Project Serve. You're going to change the world. Shining the light to those in danger. Sharing the love of the Lord with a stranger.
You could actually hear them turn their heads towards the camera.
Right.
To stare down the barrel of it.
It's like that episode where they talk about the pervasive problems of TV, or the one where they talk about how Halloween is really bad. It's like they're not talking to each other anymore. Yeah.
Right. No. It's theme stated. Well, I thought this one, I think I said this before. I thought this was a much weaker episode than the three previous. And they were hardly, the gold standard of children's programming. But I also think one of the reasons I felt this one was so weak was it was the most overtly Christian of any of them.
Yeah.
You really could have removed the Christian themes from the other ones pretty easily, and nothing would really be different. This one was like really baked in.
That is often the case with this show, honestly, where the best episodes are the ones that just are pretty much whatever, and then Chris throws in a Bible verse at the end.
Yeah.
Because there's not real drama here. What's the exciting, what's the core conflict going to be? We haven't even gotten to it yet. In this book isn't really that interesting, honestly.
No.
I mean, Jason does figure it out. He cracks the code, but this is what it turns out to be.
Best as I can figure, this book contains the minutes from some sort of club.
A club?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
They call themselves the Israelites. Look, you see here? It was headed by someone called David, and these minutes were recorded by Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this makes a lot more sense when you find out that basically they're just recounting a couple of books. Like they're like, here's the lore I set up in the novels that no one fucking bought.
Sure. Yeah. That does make sense.
And they do the thing that they love to do on Odyssey, where they do the exposition twice, because we get a rundown of what the Israelites are. On the very basic level, then we repeat that with Emma Douglas, and then we get more info from Emma Douglas in the next scene. And then we get it all repeated again in the last scene.
We really have to know the intricacies of the most boring group
It's so
in the history of the
These kids are fucking gay wads. They are just losers.
Get them. Connie gets a hold of the book and she's like, "Oh, what could this be? I don't know. What could this be?" And then she recognizes one of the names.
Wait a minute, Jack. I know this person.
Who is it?
It's Emma Douglas. She was friends with Whit. In fact, I think she even worked here for a little while before I arrived.
What's it say after her name?
Just garage paint.
So this is the lady from the Rumor Has It episode.
Because they were fucking in the graveyard.
That's the whole reason I had that
right.
episode in there, was because I needed to introduce Emma Douglas, and here she is.
Is it possible to write this in a way that is interesting, or is this always going to suck ass?
No, I think there's absolutely a way of being. I think it should be set back one generation, like not just like 5 or 6 years or something. I think it should be like, maybe this is something that they couldn't do that with Whit because he's not from Odyssey.
Right.
But like, if you're uncovering something that some other kid used to do, and it probably would be better if it was focused on the kids themselves.
Or the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But not on Jack and Jason, like kids stumbling across an old clubhouse. And I feel like this is a plot that has appeared in other places before. And then there's
it's like Stephen King, it's like the idea of kids uncovering a backstory.
Maybe with fewer things than it has going on in it, but maybe. But like, I think that is interesting.
Creature.
I think what would have made it better is if this wasn't just McCusker summarizing 2 books that he wrote, and it was a totally new plot, right? It was a totally new idea. Then he'd be able to tell a story backwards rather than recounting something that actually exists forwards.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I find that fascinating that so much of this episode relies on backstory established in books likely no one had read. You say that, I guess this show was kind of run by these 2 guys. How did they keep all this straight?
Yeah, so they ended up getting a continuity guy who also is another writer, Marshall Younger. He doesn't do quite as many episodes with his credit on them in these early years, but he was the guy who was called in to mop up the discrepancies, right? Because this is episode 293.
Yeah.
7 years. So they have a guy whose job is dedicated to keeping shit in order and getting rid of these issues that arise.
Because frequently, I mean, with these kinds of shared continuities and stuff, things just get left out. It's like, like the books don't count, or, that's like, it was true of Star Trek. It was true of Star Wars. Like, the things that aren't the main.
Yeah, the Klingons look
force.
different now. Who cares,
Right. Yeah, right.
But, it was very clear that McCusker, this was very important to him. And my big question is, why?
Well, AJ, because they did so many good things.
Because gangs are a problem.
Listen to the clip.
Well, it was so long ago, I don't expect it much matters now.
The Israelites painted your garage.
And they often came sneaking around to do my gardening, too. See, that wasn't too long after my husband died, and proud woman that I was, I just couldn't bring myself to actually ask for help. The Israelites used to come in and work when they know I'd be away or in bed asleep.
So they weren't just a group of kids Whit pulled together to teach about the Bible.
Oh, well, I expect it started that way. You know Whit. Any fun way to learn the Bible was worth trying. They had all kinds of imaginary Bible adventures. But after a while, the group took on a different purpose. You see, Whit sent them out to help folks, do good deeds, to be angels of mercy, in a manner of speaking.
How did they get away with it?
Very carefully.
Whit arranged it so the work could be done when people were away or in bed. He insisted on strict secrecy, too.
This is how you get a child shot, motherfucker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially in a town like Odyssey, everybody's packing heat in Odyssey.
During the late 80s, early 90s, there was a paralyzing fear of gang violence.
Yeah.
And that it's going to come right to your home. And we've talked about this before, using this series as an example. You are going to get castle doctrined to your fucking grave.
She actually, Emma, got freaked out a little bit at one of these Israelite help outs. And what we learned is that Whit came over to her place at night, and I quote, was telling her only enough to calm her down. And this is where I put the note, I need AJ's reaction to this.
I believe what he said was, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, and put chloroform over her nose. First of all, so many things to unpack here, but the big one for me is that Whit keeps trying everything to make the Bible fun, and maybe there just comes a point where we're like, hey, maybe this isn't fun for kids, and that's fine. Just let it be the important, horrifically boring text
Catholicism
that it is.
just jumps out. All they need is creeds and chants.
They just need creeds, particularly the second one. Ezio owns my heart, but like, there's a point. The thing that I wanted, the thing that would actually make the story interesting is the use of gangs in order to get good things done.
Right.
I know I mentioned they paint houses in Jest before, but what I want is an Odyssey version of The Irishman.
Yeah.
Where like in order to get these good Christian things done, some people gotta fucking die.
They do a bunch of CGI reverse aging on Hal Smith.
But the thing is, whether you're talking about like, inflicting violence upon the town of Odyssey or just like trying to come up with a different way to tell this story, it's not showing anything.
No.
It's just telling you 100% of, oh yeah, and then this happened, and then that happened.
I think it's also confusing, I think, for kids, for something that goes so deep into backstory from quasi-canonical sources like these books that are spin-offs that no one read. It's interesting to me that they keep throwing out the word Israelite, which seems to me does require some unpacking.
Right.
And I think because I think just simply equating Israelites with gangs just seems like a little bit a confusing thing to set up. Yeah. That there were tribes and lost tribes of Israelites and with various allegiances. And it just seems like
being kept at bay by Prester John Avery Whittaker. Yeah.
Prester John. Yeah. Right. Or just keep. It just seems like a very big thing to set up without really going into much depth at all, which I guess is sort of the point of this show. But
no, it's really weird. I don't think I'm going to read the books. Maybe I'll get some for Josh so that he can read them.
Come on.
What?
He's the only literate member of this podcast.
You love reading.
I see the books behind him.
Yeah, I have books too. I don't open them. We then get a little bit more. We're going to zoom ahead a little bit more here.
Yeah.
To Billy McPherson, this guy whose name shows up. He's the one who apologized to Emma Douglas, and now he works at a gas station. So Billy explains what the Israelites were to him after some coaxing.
What happened to the group?
Well, Mr. Whittaker said he'd keep the Israelites going only as long as we stayed interested. He didn't want it running on his desire alone. By the third summer,
he did.
Everybody went their separate ways.
Of course
Mostly because we started liking girls. But those were 2 summers I'll never forget. The best I ever had.
And then it turns out Billy, he's unchurched now. He's not going to church anymore.
Yeah.
But also, like, I feel like the through line we can get from all 4 of these episodes is that it's good, it's fine when adults tell you that you need to keep secrets. If an adult tells you something is happening and it's a secret, you should keep it, because otherwise you'll get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that the dark side of that messaging is pretty easily apparent. I mean, considering just the abuse that happens in organizations that are not operating entirely under the cover of night, where you're breaking onto people's properties and doing their gardening for them. It happens with the Boy Scouts. It's absolutely going to happen in some sort of strange, clandestine, pseudo-criminal, random acts of kindness group.
It is fascinating knowing that these were novels. The fact that like Jack gets like divine messaging telling him about to pursue this, right? Which is just it's the same thing with fucking Lost. Every time the writer's room says the island, anytime anyone says the island wants us to do this, it's the writer's room wants us to do this, right? So it literally takes divine intervention to like shoehorn all of this lore into the show, and it doesn't add anything.
No. It adds nothing.
All it does is establish the Israelites, and it establishes Billy McPherson, which, unfortunately for you, AJ, will be a recurring thing.
It just feels like reportage.
Yeah.
You're setting up this like lore and without really showing us why any of it matters. To bring it back to the Greeks, weirdly, we talk about show don't tell as a much more modern kind of way of thinking about storytelling for good reason, because it's a much more storytelling is so frequently visual these days. But a lot of Greek theater characters will come on stage and report things that happened off stage.
Right.
Because to show them would have violated the three unities, or would have been impossible to do given the construction of the theaters. I think of like the chariot race in Electra, and Sophocles' Electra. The character comes on and tells you this, almost like a sportscaster, kind of gives you the kind of play by play of this chariot race.
Yeah.
We had a sequence in Cyclops where back 10 years ago when we first wrote it, in the original Euripides text, Odysseus goes off stage for a few, comes back, and he reports on having watched the Cyclops eat his men alive, watch them eat them alive. And it was it was one of the things we had to change, because it just is sort of, as powerful as some of the writing is, it's just not really that interesting to hear someone tell you about it.
This episode pretty much just wraps up with, yep, the Israelites were a good gang that existed, and go back to church, Billy.
I think it could be interesting to, like, if the Israelites were being corrupted by Blackgaard in some way. Like if like now after all these years he could and that's what's causing all like the dangers in the town, right? All the things breaking were like actually caused by him. And maybe that is true. Maybe going forward that is true. I would have liked a little bit of that in this episode to make it mean something.
Well, no, you want to know what this episode means? They say it. Here.
So what does it all mean? We learned about a gang of kids who did good deeds for a couple of summers several years ago. Is it supposed to mean something?
Well, considering all the gangs who go around doing evil deeds, maybe it means it's an idea whose time has come again.
It's also time to ask Chas a question, which is, you had mentioned before we started rolling, like, why is this show called Odyssey? Which is a question that a few people have actually asked. And I don't know that I have a good answer. Based on what you've experienced from these 4 episodes, why do you think the show's called Odyssey?
Well, I mean, I'm just sort of going off on a limb here, but the fact that it's sort of, I mean, in 3 of the episodes, Odyssey didn't even really feel like that big of, it was a place where a lot of them were from,
right?
But it didn't really have much bearing on the episodes themselves. And I sort of wonder if that's maybe the idea, again, having not really seen much else, if the idea of these characters leaving the town, having an adventure somewhere exotic, and then eventually returning home is the reason it's called Adventures in Odyssey. Because Odysseus in the Odyssey is on his way home, and he experiences a lot of adventures on the way to get home.
Yeah.
And home is the most important thing for him. And I guess Odyssey seems to be the most important place, I guess.
Yeah, small town America. Yeah.
Small town America.
Yeah, Odysseus was the first one to focus on his family.
That's a good point.
He could have focused harder, in my opinion.
He could have.
There were a lot of people focusing on that family.
A lot of suitors. Notoriously, a lot of suitors.
It is called Adventures in Odyssey, but so often they go out and then they return, and it is that arrival and departure that in many cases defines the show and makes it what it is. It's about the nostalgia for this imagined like small town America, and sort of the values and precepts therein, but it's also about how coming home just feels good.
Do you want to know where the name Odyssey came from, more literally?
Greece.
Well, so I'm reading this from the Adventures in Odyssey wiki.
Oh, okay.
Phil Lawler came up with the name.
Yes.
He named it Odyssey after seeing William F. Buckley's United Nations Journal, A Delegate's Odyssey, on his bookshelf.
No fucking way.
Holy fucking shit.
Wow. That's amazing.
See, my guess was closer to that. My guess was closer to that.
Well, I think that tees us up very nicely to ask Chas a question about some of the storytelling that he is doing right now. If people want to enjoy some good and engaging storytelling, it's my understanding that your storytelling will be produced on a stage quite soon.
Yeah. Cyclops, a rock opera, the previously mentioned adaptation of the Euripides satyr play, is happening at the Tank in New York City from October 20th till November 3rd. It's got a great cast, including Broadway's Eric William Morris, Corey Lee Blasi, and Anissa Folds, and we're really excited about it.
Sweet. If people want to get any, like we'll put the links down in the notes for tickets and stuff like that. But if people want to follow you elsewhere, what should they do?
Yeah, Twitter is great. Instagram is great. That they tend to have when things are happening and where. When I remember to update my website, that also has it.
Also, if you would like more The Worst of All Possible Worlds after listening to this delightful episode, well, guess what? We've got more. Patreon.
Guess what? You're out of luck. Fuck you.
Guess what? Go fuck yourself, asshole. Patreon.com/worstofall is where you will find, for $5 a month, all of our premium episodes, and for $10 a month, you'll also get access to Lads Cast, which is a very exciting monthly direct-to-tape show where we just shoot the shit about whatever is on our mind.
So what did we learn today? What is our Bible quote sort of for the end of this?
I don't know, you tell me.
Here's my quote.
Never!
There's a moment in A Code of Honor when Jason is remembering something that he did as a child. He was coming up with an adventure, like some sort of like thing he played with his friends. And he describes it as he played as Gilbatron in the Beekner Galaxy, which is just so vapid
terrible.
and so just fucking awful.
Yeah,
it's like Pierce Anthony.
It does speak to something that I actually desperately crave in this show, which is at least a little drop of some imagination. We've dealt with a lot of genre pieces today, a lot of spy thriller stuff that ultimately just falls so flat because it's all just a Xerox copy of a Xerox copy of a spy story.
Yeah.
And for these people that claim to like be excellent storytellers or to take so much time crafting their worlds and crafting their art, when it comes to actually understanding what makes a good story, well, I'm just gonna quote them at themselves. There is so much more going on here than you could possibly understand or even imagine. I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And I'm the worst of all possible Joshes. See you next week.